Hi, I am the voice behind the camera for Arctic Metro 996. I was kind of hesitant to do one of these kind of videos, but right now I can't really show you anything in the car because it's in the garage again, and I feel like you guys are probably getting tired of garage pictures. It's of course snowing again, and I just did like a full wash, and not detail, but I washed it and I cleaned the convertible top, and I protected the convertible top and cleaned the leather, and it's freaking beautiful. Um, but it's snowing. Of course it's snowing on my off day. That's okay. So instead, I'll go ahead and knock out something that you guys have been asking about, which is the cost of ownership. This video is more for people who are looking to buy a 996. But if you have one, please let me know your experience because I'm sure it's different. Depending on when you have bought your car, every ownership experience is different. I think like 5-10 years ago, you could buy them for maybe 5 years ago, you could buy them for a lot less, and now the prices are going up again. But I just want to tell you about my car, our ownership experience, cost of ownership. I'm going to say up front that I think the cost, what I'm telling you here, is kind of front loaded in our time of ownership. And then I'm also going to say, because we're trying to kind of future-proof it a little bit, and then I'm also going to say that a lot of this has been elective, that we've chosen to do. So my cost of ownership might be higher than others, and that's just because we've put money into it out of choice. Whether in preventative kind of things or for entertainment, like the PCCM. So I'm just going to walk you through everything that we've had done and how much it cost, so that if you're looking to buy a 996, you know roughly what just so you learn what you're getting into. I hope that no one going into looking to own a 20-year-old car is going to think it's going to be cheap, because it's not. But it's also not going to break the bank either. So it's kind of in the middle. You can get a classic, like just one of the best sports cars ever made for an incredible deal. Like just crazy good price. And they are really reliable, and they are really easy to maintain. So especially if you have any sort of mechanical skills whatsoever and you can fix things yourself, it's even better. So going back to my car. So mine is a Carrera 4 Cabriolet. So one thing that you're going to notice if you're looking for cars is that you're going to pay more for the coupes or coupe version. And then mainly what people are looking for right now is the base Carrera. So it's the rear-wheel drive base Carrera in the coupe version. And then those prices are going up. And then the C4Ss especially are definitely going up. You might see C4Ss go for almost as much as turbos, which is crazy, but good for the C4Ss. So this was the first, I think this was the first C4S. I might be wrong about that, but I think that's true. So those are .2s, so they're from 2002 to 2004 is where you're going to find those. And I'll make a whole video on each version of the 996 and why they're different or special. And then the turbos, and then the GT cars. There's a GT3 and a GT2. GT2s are so cool. GT3s are cool too. That was the first GT3 ever. The .1s actually were the first GT3, but .2s here in America. That's the first year that America got the GT3. So anyway, I digress. Those are going to be a little more expensive than your cabriolets. Cabriolets are more expensive when they're bought new, but then on the resale value they drop hard. So, and then the all-wheel drive versions will sell for more in places where you kind of need an all-wheel drive car, so like Colorado or Alaska or somewhere where there's a lot of snow up in the north, where you really do need an all-wheel drive car versus somewhere in the south like Florida or Texas, where you barely ever see snow and you don't need an all-wheel drive car. So the fours should be cheaper theoretically. So make sure you look nationwide to see if you can find the best deal. Another tip is that you buy just the best example that you can. So I'll tell you why I bought my car for the price I did. But make sure you really do a thorough investigation. Make sure you get a good PPI or pre-purchase inspection by a reputable either Indy or dealer. And really look the car over well. If it's a manual, make sure you get a DME report, which will tell you about over revs. Make sure you inspect the car inside and out. Obviously, the most important thing is what's under the hood and making sure that the working parts are actually working. But which you can only really tell if you get it a good PPI and drive it. But just try to check all your boxes and make sure you're really doing a thorough investigation so that you know what you're getting into. So rule number 1 is buy the best example of car that you can. That's within your budget. Okay, so cost of my car. So it's a 2002 Carrera 4 Cabriolet. So as I mentioned, you're going to pay less for the cabriolets and you're going to pay less for the all-wheel drives, which works perfect for me because I live in a state where I need all-wheel drive, and I've never had a convertible before, so I was like, sure, yeah, let's try the convertible, and I actually really love it. So we paid in March of 2020. We actually bought it I want to say a week or two after the lockdown started. So everything kind of shut down on March 12th, and we bought it I think March 20th or so. So we had been looking at 911s, and we wanted to get into one as a weekend car because we already had 2 daily drivers. And so we didn't want to spend a whole lot. We wanted to pay for it up front because that's another thing, is if you're trying to buy a 20-year-old car, yes, you can finance it, but I don't recommend that because the interest rates, even if you have perfect credit, are just sky high. So and a lot of people don't know how to appraise old cars like this. So your interest rates are going to be sky high. Your insurance is going to be all off. It's just kind of tough. So make sure you work with a good insurance company once you buy one, that they know how much your car's actually worth. And then try to pay cash for it if you can, or put as much down as you can. So March 2020, right after COVID, a lot of this was too early for car prices to really dip, but everyone was kind of freaked out. And so I think we could have probably done better if we had gone to an auction site like Bring a Trailer or the P-Car Market, because everyone was freaking out about COVID. We didn't do that, and I'm actually grateful because we went to our dealership, which is Porsche Colorado Springs, and we knew what we were getting into with them. They're a premier dealership. They basically, what that means, there's only a few in the country. I don't remember how many, but not all Porsche dealerships are the premier dealerships. Basically, they have excellent customer service, very high customer satisfaction. They rate really, really well on all their customer surveys, and because of that, because they keep their customers so happy, they get extra allocations of GT cars, and they get a little bit of extra money, I think. So they're just an amazing dealership, so try to look for one of those if you can too. And of course, I'm going to recommend my dealership because they're amazing, and I've had an amazing experience with them. So amazing that I'm looking at my 3rd Porsche from them. So you want a good, reputable dealer. So like I said, I don't know how I tangent so bad. I need to drink my coffee before I do this. Sorry. So anyway, March 2020, right after COVID hit, dealership prices had not gone down yet. And so I had driven a 2001 Carrera 4 Cabriolet, actually in the exact same color scheme too. And it was a Tiptronic, and it was not well taken care of. And I was so disappointed. It was my first 911. It was my first Porsche drive. And I remember thinking, this is a 911? Maybe they've just gotten a lot better in the last 20 years. But I don't like this. So, but then right next to it for I think $1,000 extra or $2,000 extra, because they had almost the exact same mileage, it was crazy, was mine. And so I didn't know how to drive a manual at the time, so my husband drove. And I just remember as soon as you open the door, actually even before that, as soon as you look at it, you're like, wow, this is a really clean car. I don't see any dents or dings or scratches. The paint is beautiful. The cabriolet top is beautiful. It's like pristine. And then you open the door and it is like a whole nother world. Like nothing was broken. The interior was perfect. The exterior was perfect. The only thing there was there were a few scratches on the little coin holder. But like the leather was in excellent condition. It was like stepping into a whole different, like completely unrelated car, even though they were only a year apart. And then the difference between the Tiptronic and the manual, like the manuals are so fun and just so smooth, and like they're exactly what you expect a 911 to be. The Tiptronics were the best that they could do at the time, but an automatic transmission has advanced so much in the past 20 years. Like the PDKs are just ridiculous. That the Tiptronics are just kind of like underwhelming. It takes like 3 seconds for it to shift a gear and decide what gear it wants to be in, and you're like, all right, we gonna go? Let's go, when you press the accelerator. Whereas the manual is that kind of raw, authentic feel that you want from a kind of classic Porsche. And it is a classic now. It's the newest classic. So very exciting. Going back to that, you just want to find the best example that you can find. And so immediately it was like, oh no, I love this car. This car is it. I didn't even know how to drive it yet, but I'm like, this is it. Let's do this. And so we bought the car for $22,700. And that was a little bit over market value. Just comparing, auction sites and other dealers and especially some kind of shadier dealers. But I didn't want to mess with all that. And I had actually learned that they showed us the invoice, like the internal invoice for all the work that they did before we even bought it. And it was like $5,000. They did like $5,000 worth of work on this car. And so that's another thing that you're going to get from a premier dealer, especially Porsche Colorado Springs. I feel comfortable buying a pre-owned Porsche from them because they put so much work into it before you buy it. So, I mean, they literally updated tons of stuff, like new brakes, I can't even think of, it was a lot. I think the mechanism for the cab top had been broken, which is like, I think it's like $1,200. They fixed that. They fixed all sorts of stuff before we even bought it. So that was really nice. And then, so that was $22,700. So again, it was above market value. Market value for that car was probably around $20,000. But for all the work that they did beforehand, I know that I can trust them, and I know that this car is going to be in better condition and is in better condition than, especially what's on the inside. That matters more to me than what's on the outside, because you can't always see problems that are going to go wrong. And you can have a car that looks good but is not in good condition. So I felt safe buying from them, and I feel like we got a decent deal on it. And especially now, looking at values now, prices are up. Like if I were to try to sell my car right now after putting almost 7,000 miles on it, it would probably be around the same price that we bought it for, if not a little more. So, and we didn't buy it to be an investment, and it's not. I'm still going to drive the crap out of it every day, but that is just something to think about, is that these values on these 996s are going up. And I'm sure they're going to come, it's going to be like this, as Porsches always are, but I think the 996 is finally getting a little bit of the attention and the credit it deserves, and it's starting to go up a little bit. Car was running great, had no issues, and then in the summer, so a few months into ownership, using it as a weekend car, it started to make kind of a weird noise, and I don't remember what the noise, it sounded like a weird, like, humming noise almost, but it wasn't a hum, it was like a belt. I don't know, it was weird. But anyway, it ended up being the air oil separator, which is one of the two main things that go wrong on these cars. So the biggest thing is the IMS bearings, the intermediate shaft bearing. You're going to see problems on those cars where they haven't been driven. So if you see really low mileage cars that have not been driven, that is where I would be wary of the IMS bearing failing. If the IMS bearing fails, it will blow up your engine. And then it's like at least, a full engine rebuild is at least $6,000, all the way up to like $12,000 or more. So you definitely don't want your IMS failing. The the air oil separator can also go bad on them. So we decided, since the air oil separator was kind of on the fritz, that we were going to do the clutch, even though the clutch was like, I think it like 50 to 60%. We just kind of wanted to set ourselves up for success and longevity later. So we ended up doing the air oil separator, the clutch, the IMS and RMS. So IMS retrofit from Ellen Engineering, and then the RMS, the rear main seal. We fixed all 4 of those things. The IMS alone will cost you about $2,000 if you pay a dealership to do it. I think you can buy it yourself and try it yourself for like $12,000, but it's an engine out job. So to take the engine out, and that alone is a lot of work. So it's pretty labor intensive. And that's why we decided to do the clutch and the air oil separator and the RMS while it was out anyway. So I recommend, if you're going to do your IMS, see what else you can do while you're in there, because getting the engine out is a lot of work and it's going to cost you more money, just from a labor perspective. So all that costs around $4,000. I think it was $4,300 or so. Or maybe it's $4,000. It might have been right at 4. So not cheap. So at that point we were about $27,000 in. And at that point is when I decided to sell my my X3. So, and that's just because I loved driving the 996. It didn't even have anything to do with like trying to save money, really, so I could spend more money on this car. It was really just because I loved the 996 and I wanted to drive it every day. So the next thing I did, so the only thing out of this so far that I've had to do was the air oil separator, and I'm not actually sure how much that one costs on its own, or how much that labor will cost. But then the clutch and the IMS, RMS, we all did preventatively. And then in the fall, I was driving the car every day, and I decided that I really wanted a better stereo system, because the original radio worked. It worked great, and this, like I mentioned in previous videos, the sound system is amazing. But I just don't listen to the radio. I hadn't listened to the radio in like 3 years. And so I really was kind of looking for an updated infotainment system, and that's when Porsche released the PCCM Plus. They released that shortly before, and so the PCCM Plus cost $1,299 on Suncoast parts. Installation, and remember, there's a second part that you need. The installation and just labor is what kind of costs a lot, because it's intense. They have to take a bunch of stuff out of the dash. They have to rewire a bunch of things. There's a mic they have to put in. They have to ground some things. So like, people who have put it in have said that it's kind of intense. But if you can do it yourself, more power to you, because that's just more way to save money. So that cost about $2,000 with labor. And then around that time, we had the IMS checkup. So about 6 months after the IMS, we did. They check the engine, they check the oil to make sure that it's working properly. So they check it for like little metal shavings and stuff. And I think they might do an oil change. Yeah, of course they do. They do an oil change then. So we got an oil change done then. And so that was free. They didn't charge us for that. And then around that time, let me find you this video because it's freaking crazy. I was at work, and my car had been starting to make kind of a weird noise, but I couldn't really tell what it was, and it wasn't every single time I drove it. It was only sometimes, so I really didn't know what it was. And I was at work when it made the worst noise I've ever heard out of a car. Find it. Where is it? Come on. Did I delete it? I might have deleted it. I think I did. Anyway, it sounded like nails on a chalkboard. Like the screeching, just like from the back of the engine. And I'd open it up and it'd just get louder. And oh, here it is, I think. No. No, that's not it. I think I deleted it. I did. Anyway, nails on a chalkboard. Awful. And so I took it in, and it was the secondary air pump had failed. So that part from Porsche is like $1,700. So it would have cost like $22,000 or something to put in. And I was like, no. So I found the Bosch part for like $600 or $500. So I was like, okay, well, if we buy the Bosch part, can you guys put it in? And they're like, yeah. So that's what we did. We bought the Bosch part, and then our dealership installed it for us. So if the dealership installs a part that's not OEM, then they won't warranty it. But I'm not worried about it too much because I could literally buy 4 of the secondary air pumps for the price that it would cost for the OEM one. So if it goes out again, oh well. I don't think it's going to. It's been totally fine. And that was back in, I think, September, October sometime. It was around the time of the checkup in the PCCM. So the only other thing that we did is we put winter tires on it. So we bought Pirelli Soda 03s and had those put on, and that cost around $1,200. So maybe a little less. Maybe it was $1,000. I can't remember. I think it was around $1,200 though. And then we just held on to our summers. So all of that total adds up to about $30,500. So I will say that oil changes are about $250. So again, apparently it's really easy to do. If you can do it yourself, if you have the tools and the equipment, just do it yourself and you'll save a ton of money. Just make sure you do it right. But these cars are apparently the most easy modern Porsches to work on by yourself. They're like some of the most DIY friendly cars. Or Porsches, I should say. Modern Porsches. And I will say that yes, we have put, we spent $30,000 on this car, this 20-year-old car, which seems crazy. But it's all about, I'm going back to what you value, this car just brings me so much joy every time I drive it. Every time. Whether I'm going to work or I'm taking it on a little road trip or like I'm going out with like a cars and coffee type thing, like every time I drive it, every single time I get in it, it makes me happy. Unless it makes that horrible noise like it did that one time. Just brings you so much joy. And so to me, that's worth it. And it's all paid for. I don't owe anybody anything for it. So that's also kind of a peace of mind thing. And I also will say that like I said, the only thing that we've had to fix was the air oil separator and the secondary air pump. Everything else was either preventative or for fun. So it was basically by choice. So I'm saying if you don't have a ton of money, I just want you to know that these cars, they're very reliable. I mean, can you imagine, like I've put 7,000 miles on this car since daily driving it in August. I drive it through the snow. I've driven it through a snowstorm, a crazy snowstorm that I should not have been driving in. And multiple times. I drive it in the snow all the time, actually. I've driven it for almost 400 miles. In one sitting, like driving with like brand new M2s and new Cayman GTSs, and it keeps up just fine. Like, this car is a badass little car. I love it. I love it so much. And to me, it's absolutely worth it. And so, like, if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for a very connected driving experience, a very analog driving experience where you feel like, like what driving is supposed to feel like, this is it. And you can get that for $20,000 to $30,000. And yes, they do cost money to maintain. And yes, Porsche parts are expensive, and Porsche mechanics are more expensive than, a Ford mechanic or something. But they're worth it. So, and I will say that I think a lot of these costs are front loaded. So I'm going to make a follow-up video in the future, maybe a year down the road, about other things that we've done to it and how much that's cost. But really the cost of ownership, I think, is front loaded because we're doing all these preventative and optional things. And I think for the next few years, she's going to be really good to us, and we're just not going to have to pay that much for her. So, I think if you're thinking about it, if you're on the fence about it, I would just say be careful. Make sure that you find a good example from a reputable dealer or seller. Do your homework. Make sure that the car is in good condition, has good records, looks good inside, outside, and on the inside, and runs well. And then be prepared to, I would kind of have like a car little rainy day fund with a couple $1,000s just in case something does go wrong. But that's just the price you pay for owning a 20-year-old car, I think, and expecting to drive it every day or drive it. So I do think the cost that I'm describing to you is higher than the average person because of what we've optioned to do, and then I do think it's front loaded. So I hope that doesn't scare you away. If you have questions, comments, please just comment below. Please be nice. And I'll be happy to talk with you if you have any other questions or comments. So I hope you learned something from this video. I'm sorry I rambled. I can't believe it's 25 minutes long, but have a great day. Thanks.